What he represents is patriarchy.
We're here to do work as men, as patriarchs.
There's nothing more natural than being a father.
Welcome back to the 21 Convention 2019 Special Patriarch Edition of Orlando, Florida. Our next speaker is a former strongman, the CEO of Strength Camp, a great new friend of mine this year, one of my favorite new speakers, and he is a famous YouTuber with about 2 million YouTube subscribers between his two channels. Definitely one of the biggest speakers we have ever had on this stage, a man I'm proud to present on this stage next. Please help me welcome to the stage, the proud patriarch, by the way, of 4, Elliott Hulse. Thanks, Elliott.
Thank you, Anthony.
Yes, sir. Kick some ass, man.
Yeah. Well, I'm pleased to be a part of this movement and the spark which ignites a movement. And I've spoken on some pretty big stages, and right now this one is small. This group is small. But all it takes is a small spark to start a raging forest fire. And I really, truly believe that that's what this moment is. And it's not even that we are the spark, though we are. It's that this is the sparked moment in time. This is when the pendulum begins to swing back to righteousness and man takes back his nobility and our place in the family. That's a big part of what we're going to be talking about here today. Before I move on, I also want to thank Anthony and the 21 Convention staff here for creating this sacred space to house this spark that will facilitate the roaring flame. So thank you, Anthony. Very important work that's being done here. Critical for the development of mankind, but more specifically for the perpetuation, the maturation, and the proliferation of a righteous Western culture. I really and truly believe that. There's a huge attack upon it, but we are seeing the pendulum swing, as I said. I think that marriage is worth defending, and that's the name of my talk, as you saw there, defending marriage in a degenerate age. Doesn't take much convincing, especially since the guys that spoke here before me asserted to the idea, Sak was just up here, that marriage and patriarchy is built into our DNA. Fatherhood is built into our DNA. It's a good idea. I'm just going to expand on a little bit more about why it's a good idea and maybe how we can navigate it best. So what we're going to discuss is, number one, the war against marriage and the family. There is a war to destroy us, and it begins with destroying the man, destroying the family, destroying the sanctity of the children that are being raised in those families, and turning things topsy-turvy, where the children rule the families, the mother, of course, wants to do everything for the children, and the father on the bottom is being led by the wife and the children. So we live in a backwards time. In the war, they are winning. And we'll talk a little bit more about why. Number two, protect your marriage against infidelity. In this YOLO, hedonistic, do what you want as long as it feels good culture with zero boundaries, zero discipline, no devotion, infidelity is kind of like going to a drive-thru. Everybody just does it, right? I want to talk a little bit about that. I could rant, but I got to stay on track. Finding pleasure in your marriage. You know, the old saying that it's a ball and chain, game over. That's a mindset, that's a paradigm that I think is bred out of our, or has come out of our degenerate culture, our hedonistic culture, our long-lost, confused culture. There's tremendous pleasure to be found in being yoked with a feminine counterpart. We're better together, as Rollo would say. We're better together. Men and women are, not only is it better together as human beings, but we understand that everything in the incarnate world works together in opposites, zeros and ones, sun and moon, day and night, tick-tock, systole, diastole, lub-dub, works together, we work together. leading your wife and family. So much great advice has been offered this weekend. I am grateful because I wish somebody would have told me some of these things. I had my dad's example, but not necessarily his word on a lot of these things. That had I been conscious of it rather than allowing things to play out unconsciously, that leading would have been a lot easier right from the get-go. So you guys understand that you're getting a solid foundation here. How to find a good wife. Damn, I feel bad for you guys, especially y'all that are young and don't have wives yet. I don't know what I would do with these chicks in the Instagram culture. Tough. But you got a lot of really good advice. I think of Steve Williams' advice that you gave you guys about how to date and what you expect. Set those boundaries very early. So before we get into that, we got to talk about a couple myths, a couple lies. I call them liberal lies about marriage that need to be dispelled before we go into, some of the information that I want to offer. Number one is this lie that humans are promiscuous by nature. And interestingly, I was introduced to this book when I found the Red Pill. It was promoted by, another Red Pill teacher. And as I got through it and as I read it and as it started to put it into context, I realized that the only people that really love this book are pickup artists and feminists. Really, just look at the book itself. It's teasing you with the vagina on it. But I don't want to go too far. I got how we mate, why we stray, and what it means for modern relationships. So here's the premise that the quote-unquote scientists or researchers tried to offer in this book that is not new to this book, but we've been duped into this lie for quite some time. And that is the lie of the bonobo. Has anybody heard this? That we may be more like bonobos, they say. Because now we got to study the bonobo because the bonobo is a bit more evolved as a creature than, say, the chimp, which we've related to a lot longer before. And that's even if you believe in evolution. I'm not here nor there, but I'm saying that these people who believe that promiscuity is a part of our DNA go to the bonobo as why. You want to know a little bit about the bonobo? Number one, here's some interesting facts about the bonobo. The bonobo lives in a relatively safe community where there is plenty of food. There's not much competition for resource. Food is readily available. That's one thing. Bonobo men father children, but they don't know who their children are. They have sex because the women are ready, willing, and able, and there are lots of them. There are lots of women. And they're ready to bone. And they give birth, and the fathers very rarely, almost never know, and there's no bond between father and child in the bonobo culture. But in the bonobo culture, the boy, the baby, stays close and connected to the mother well into adulthood. In some cases where the mother will come into the boy's defense when he's an older bonobo. Very much mommy-boy tie. Very little daddy-boy tie. Very little male-to-male tie or bonding. In the bonobo culture, the men are sort of, they're submissive to the woman's agenda, the female agenda. The women are in control of inter-tribal relations. If a group of male bonobos or if a male bonobo starts to get out of hand, the women form coalitions. So the female, and they squash any male resistance very quickly. So they have no support, but if they do act out, the mommy culture comes down on them really hard to put them back in their place. As far as sex is concerned, it's interesting that in bonobo culture, there's a lot of homosexuality. And one of the practices of the female bonobos when they meet new tribes is in order to solidify the pact, the female bonobos will start having orgies with each other, female sex with each other. And the male bonobos will kind of just like sit around, you know? And and eventually they may like join in, but it's about the women. So Jack Donovan calls the bonobo, or calls our culture, because there's a lot of significance, the bonobo masturbation society. Plenty of food, plenty of women, plenty of sex. Who needs to know their daddy? Mama tells us everything. We got this Oedipal complex thing going on. So there's some credence to the fact that we may be more like bonobos. So I want you to keep that in mind. But as you listen to this, I just want you to also notice the feeling in your body when I told you how the bonobos behave and what their culture is like. No judgment, just notice your sense. Bonobo Masturbation Society, referring to Jack Donovan once again, a book that every man needs to read, The Way of Man. And in The Way of Man, he says that the way of men is the way of the gang. And in the book, he gives another, or actually a more appropriate example of how mankind evolved, humankind evolved, and how we got here. And we've always sort of related to, prior to, I think, like the 1950s or 60s, when they started studying bonobos, to the chimp. And for the most part, if you ask most people today, they'd say, yeah, we're more like the chimp. And there's a good reason why we relate to the chimp. And there's some things that you need to know about the chimp, not the fucking bonobo. Right? I just want you to also, too, because I get off on tangents, look at the cover of this book here. I just want you to know where you're getting your sources of information from and what you guys choose to use as resources, because there's so much information, there's so much science, there's so much references out there. It all contradicts each other. You got to use your senses sometimes. And when you got a book that I just sense I'm being tricked with a big vagina on the fucking cover, I feel like I'm going to get some real talk right now. Got to judge a book by its cover, right? So anyway, the way of the gang is the way of the chimp. And what you ought to know about chimps is, number one, where they live, food is not as plentiful, and they prefer high-quality food. Where the bonobo will eat what's like, they very rarely eat meat. They'll eat mostly plants. There's a certain amount of plant. There's a certain plant, and there's not very much competition for it. The chimps, they want meat. We want meat. And as a result, they got to work for it. And the best way to work for meat is in small, patriarchal, hierarchical bands of brothers that will work together to go out and hunt what he refers to as the red colobus monkey. So they're going out, and in order to be able to maintain their vitality, to live, they've got to organize themselves as a band of brothers in a hierarchical way that, number one, allows them to go out and get food, and number two, protect their territory, number three, raid and take out competing tribes because resources are limited. Also, female chimps are highly prized because they are in limit also. So they were treated more like a commodity. And so they were protected so that there could be future chimp tribes. And they were submissive because if they wanted to live and they wanted to eat, they had to listen to what the gang said. The way of the chimps follow the way of man. This is how we got here. This is deeply embedded in our DNA. We work as bands of brothers with a source, a goal, with this ever expanding sense or drive to, and I was speaking with one of the guys before, to insert and liberate, to dominate and expand. This is very masculine. This is very American. This is very Western. This is very Genghis Khan. This is very civilized. Civilization comes from the way of the gang, the way of the chimp. So just to move on past this one liberal lie that we're more like the bonobo than that guy, just look once again. Do you want patriarchy? Who do you want to have your back? I wish I had a pointer here. Do I have a pointer? Who do you want to have your back? Who do you want to go to war with? Who do you want to go hunt food with? This guy who's beaten off and looking for the next piece of pussy if she'll give it to him? Or that guy who looks like, yeah, he's ready. He's ready, he's tough, he looks wise, strong, able, patriarch. So I don't know the truth. I don't know if any of this monkey's business is true at all. But this is one of the lies, this is one of the paradigms, one of the foundations for their reasons why we need to be out there jizzing and juking and being promiscuous and undevoted to our families, cheating on our wives or whatever, because it is. Get out of here. You guys choose. You decide. Way of the chimp or the way of the bonobo? I don't know. Liberal lie number 2. Liberal lie about marriage. You know, and I use that term literally, liberal lie, because it's all about getting loose. It's all about no boundaries. It's all about no authority. It's all about nothing matters and everything's okay. Very loose, lax, promiscuous, even in ideology. Lie number 2, marriage is a social construct, a patriarchal makeup from religion or for political power. This myth came to be by this white woman trying to prove a point to bring back to her privileged culture why the women should be sluts. And so she goes to Samoa, where the savages live. Just think about the arrogance. Where the savages lives, in order to, she had an agenda, of course, Margaret Mead, had an agenda to prove that the noble savage is a slut and that the girls start throwing their puss around at age 12, 13, 14. She calls it Coming of Age in Samoa. This was a big book, it was a big feminist push. It was very helpful to this leftist agenda. Psychological study of the primitive youth for Western culture. So she's trying to help out Western civilization with some, what's the term I just used? Uncivilized, as they would, they're very quick to point out these savages. Yeah, savage when it's in your interest, that they're savages, but because she wants to prove that American women should be sleeping around, she's going to go there and try to do some investigation. Well, turns out, and just check this out, that picture, if a picture ain't worth 1,000 words, I can't help but just think arrogance. Look at you. She's out there and she wants to prove that these girls are sluts. And I love this picture so much more because of that boy standing right there. Just check out his face. He smells the lie all over her. He's got that face like, I don't know what you're doing here, woman, but you better be careful around our women. Well, it turns out she was a complete liar. The work that she came back with was completely refuted but unpublished because it wasn't in line with the agenda or the idea or the leftist policy. But this man, Derek Friedman, you could do some research on him, he went back to Samoa because he believed that she was wrong. He knew she was wrong, did his own study, brought back his own conclusion in Margaret Mead in Samoa, The Making and Unmaking of an Anthropological Myth. It turns out, now check these people out, it turns out that these noble people, I mean, you can't not look at that picture and think that these are noble people. Integrity, strength, tradition. Look at the two men, the two patriarchs sitting there. Do you think they're going to have their women standing back there loose? Do these look like loose women to you? They're not. They're so conservative that when a woman gets married on her wedding night, in order to make sure that she was a virgin, they must display the sheets that have blood that prove that a hymen was broken. If that's not the case, she brings shame. Do these look like women that want to bring shame to those men? I don't think so. Liberal lie number 2. So it's not in our DNA. I don't believe that we're bonobos, masturbating and screwing and letting women push us around. And Margaret Mead was wrong. It's not about Christianity. It's not about religion. It's an archetype that's found in the human condition, even in the savage. Just to continue, Marriage in Greek and Roman Culture, great book, Staying Married in the Degenerate Age by Michael Sebastian. He talks a little bit about reference to how marriage was treated in the ancient world. It says here, marriage was indissoluble and divorce was impossible, almost impossible. The Roman law did indeed permit the dissolution of the marriage, but the dissolution of the religious marriage was very difficult. Religion had ritual that brought you together. It goes on, for that, a new sacred ceremony was necessary, as religion alone could separate what religion had united. It wasn't sign a document with the state. It was between, as it had been, between a man, a woman, and the Father above. Barbarian culture. Another shout out to Jack Donovan. He's got another book, a second or a third book called Be a Barbarian. Interesting that he went there with that. And in what we know from the Roman historian Tacitus, what he writes of the Germanic tribes is that the marriage bond is strict, and no feature of their mode of life is more credible to them than this. They are content with one wife. Barbarians! One wife. Very few of them have more than one, and these few exceptions are not due to wantonness. They are the case of men of high rank to whom several matrimonial alliances have been offered from motives of politics. And even if you look in like Islam and Muhammad saying, take upon yourself multiple wives, it was a policy of protection because there were warring tribes and there were a lot of women that needed protection from men. And that's why he said, bring these women in, have multiple wives. It wasn't from wantonness. It wasn't because they were sluts. It wasn't because they were licentious with their behavior. They were content with one wife. And I remember reading Genghis Khan and the Making of the Civilized World. We're talking about Germanic tribes and barbarians, but even Genghis and the roaming beasts, that they would call him, of the Mongols, content with one wife. They were very noble in their relationship. So, I'm convinced that it's a part of the human psyche and soma. It is in our mind, it is in our spirit, it is in our pattern, and it is deep-rooted in our biology and DNA. And Jesus agrees. And we'll talk more about why I think that's important. And although this is not Jesus making this up, he's just reminding us. In the wisdom text of old, he says, have you not read that the one who made them at the beginning made them male and female, like everything in the world? And said, for this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife. Be a big boy. And the two shall become one flesh. So that they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together, let no man separate. It's good. It's righteous. It's noble. It's savage. It's human. The war on marriage and the family, very quickly. Female primary social order, a term I learned from Rollo. If you haven't had an opportunity to listen to Rollo's talk on my podcast, he goes real deep in the beginning with this. We recorded it last week, female primary social order. So those of you guys who are rational men, you know, it's this unfettered, unchecked hypergamy that is at the foundation of this female primary social order that is deleterious to the marriage bond and to the archetype of marriage. The state, easy divorce. We all know that the majority of divorces are initiated by women. Women at work, as a result of state supporting that, because more women at work equals more tax slaves. Marxism, socialism, equalism, this pervasive ideology that has America by its balls, the left you could call it. I have a couple quotes here. One quote from Friedrich Engels in The Origin of the Family. You could see the disdain in how it continues. Private property and the state. He goes on to say, the modern individual family is founded on the open or concealed domestic slavery of the wife. And modern society is a mass composed of these individual families as molecules. Just consider the language, consider the paradigm from which that kind of attitude proceeds. They're overthinking. There's nothing about slavery in marriage. A woman is not a slave, if seen rightly. But with the social justice warriors needing something to fight against, they use words like this. They use words like racist and misogynist and slave. They lie. To go a little bit further in that same direction, feminism. This is Roxanne Dunbar of the Female Liberation as a Basis for Social Revolution discourse. I know how much Anthony hates feminism. And I didn't understand because I didn't dig too deep until recently. And when I found this quote that I'll share with you right now, I began to realize how evil feminism really is. So according to Roxanne Dunbar, how will the family unit be destroyed? This is her question. She poses this. How will the family unit be destroyed? After all, women must take care of the children, and there will continue to be children. Our demand for full-time childcare in the public schools will be met to some degree overall, and perhaps fully in places. You see this. The alleviation of the duty of the full-time childcare in private situations will free many women to make decisions they could not before. But more than that, the demand alone will throw the whole ideology of the family into question so that women can begin establishing a community of work with each other and can fight collectively. Women will be freer to leave their husbands and become economically independent, either through a job or welfare. Yeah. You know, and I didn't realize this. I thought it was more about women's rights, and I understand women's rights, and I'm okay with women's rights. But this is an assault. It is terrorism against the family. They want to destroy it because it is the founding building block. She's right. She acknowledges it's the building block of our civilization. There's evil at play. There's nothing to be built or grown or good by destroying the family. No civilization survives with destroyed families. The war on family, I'm going to start going a little bit quicker here. Consumerism. Consumerism has been, to me, I think is the disease that we're all addicted to. They say, capitalism is the problem, but it's not. It's us. It's the constant sucking in consumption, be it food, entertainment, needing more. And apparently, what I've learned is that the pregnant woman is the biggest spender in America. You want to make a lot of money, you sell shit to pregnant women. And if you've ever had a pregnant woman, you know how much shit gets bought. They even have these racket parties where they call them showers, where they shower with you with all kinds of shit that you'll never need because you got to spend money. The baby. Bullshit. Families are more... Yeah. You guys are laughing because you know. We have these showers, there's like all kinds of junk that we've never used. And because our order is backwards and we put children on the top and fathers at the bottom, it basically goes like, wife, what do you feel the child needs? Which is basically everything. It's the baby. We got to sacrifice. And as a man, as a servant leader, doing the best he can, especially if not red-pilled, yes, dear. And so he provides for a bunch of bullshit. And it's not the woman's fault, and it's not the baby's fault. I don't need to say any more. Families are more focused on working jobs to buy more stuff rather than providing guidance, offering wisdom, and teaching religion. Now, make no mistake, your children are learning religion. In the schools, even the public schools, on television, they're getting guidance. They're getting wisdom. They're just not getting the right stuff. They're not getting what you would want them to have, if you've even thought about what you want them to have. Because that's tough for us to even think when we're swimming in the shit. Tanner used the term yesterday. I felt my heart sank when he said, you guys are living in the wastelands. Was that the term you used? The ruins. Yeah, we're living in Babylon. We're living in the ruins. It's pervasive, insidious, all around us. We're suffocating with this shit. And make no mistake, it is religion. It's not the religion of our fathers. It's the religion of our matriarchy, bonobo religion. War on family, corporations, women in the workforce, flood the market with excess labor, and limited jobs, thus driving down wages. So you got to understand it has a lot to do with profit. To destroy the family in this sort of backdoor way where let's liberate women, like Dunbar said, and guess what that does? That creates, what does that mean now, 5 minutes? Oh, thank you. That creates more competition in the workplace. So a number of things happens. Number one, now women and men are competing with each other. Right? I mean, the list goes on. Women and men are competing with each other for less jobs, lower wages. Women are not in the home, so they're not caring for their children. They're not leading their children. They're not caring for their homes. They're out there having extramarital affairs. Why? Why? Corporations and the media and the emotion that they drum up around women in the workplace trick everybody. The most important job, profession, devotion to something in life is the bearing and rearing of children. What could possibly be more important in the corporate world than bearing and caring for and raising children? Nothing. But it's a trick. They've been tricked into thinking that they are somehow enlightened and progressive by sending their kids to childcare and competing with men in the marketplace. And because of the Marxist attitude, the social Marxism, you can't say anything against that. You can't refute that because then you're a misogynist. You're some sort of a extremist. This is extreme shit right here. If you look into the history of mankind, this is extreme. We're in a weird place, folks. So I'm sort of making a case, and I'm talking around why, marriage is a good idea, and I think I can get more into that. I tried to relate that with my story. But if you do decide to get married, right, which, my only hang-up, this is my biggest hang-up with marriage right now, is state involvement. It's my biggest hang-up. I think marriage is wonderful. It's great. I'm giving you a case for it. My whole thing's called In Defense of Marriage. But the one thing that that is the fly in the ointment is the state involvement. And I think they know that. They got us by the balls in that way. And I think religion needs to go back to between the man, the woman, and the Creator, and get the state out of it completely. Neither here nor there. But, the state loves divorce. So here are some of the liberal lies that encourage divorce. The spiritual awakening. So I'm going to go there right now. The spiritual awakening. Everybody's woke. And this is this particularly comes from this book, Eat, Pray, Love, where this was like a bestseller. I think Oprah's bestseller. And then somehow in this story, the woman, she settled down, she gets married. We all know the story. He's probably a beta male provider. Has children. And then she falls out of love. She wants to go and find herself and go to Bali and India in the East. So here's where I'm going to go with that. And so she has a spiritual awakening. I'm coming to this sense. Let me put it. I'm spiritually promiscuous, meaning I love God, I love religion, I've dabbled with it all, and I love Eastern religion. In fact, it was a big part of my foundation is Taoism and Buddhism, and studying the work of Alan Watts way back when he wasn't on YouTube. There was no YouTube back then. But I think Eastern religion coming to the West, where we were mostly Abrahamic, has created a lot of chaos. And I think one of the bits of chaotic bullshit that we were fed is this spiritual awakening stuff and how it just liberates you to be and do whatever you want. Spiritual awakening in this sense is not, and even this word has its negative association these days, it's not religion because it doesn't unify the father with the mother. It doesn't bring pattern down into matter through discipline and boundaries. This is the idea that anything goes. It's the left hand. So spiritual awakening, my ass. Divorce is a celebration, and I see this with, now my wife and I have always been younger than our children's friends' parents, but a lot of my wife's friends are our children's friends' parents. So they're a little bit older than us. We got started early. So we get to kind of see not what our life would look like, but what life starts to look like a few steps down the road for those who live in the ruins. And one of the things that they do is it's a celebration. Well, you're going to get divorced. And it's the women, of course. The guys, we ain't doing this. But when I've kind of stepped in and spoke to some of the guys that I know were having divorces. And I don't throw a celebration. Actually what I've been doing is I've been throwing a red pill party. I'm like, okay, now she's gone. And I hand him a book of Rational Male. And read this and start spinning plates, bro. But the women, what they do is, it turns into this whole liberation party. And Rollo talks about how women will never check their other women's hypergamy. And even my wife, who's a great wife, is out there celebrating with her friends that are having divorces. And she knows how I feel about that. But she can't help it. She's got hypergamy. And so they cheer each other on no matter how wrong they are. They can't help it. And I understand it. It's biological. I've had my fly open the whole time. I'm a chimp. You see those chimps? They look like gangsters. You know, had his ball hanging out. Divorce leads to a sex-filled single life. This is that old Sex and the City bullshit that they give them on TV. These old, used up 50-year-old hags who are out there screwing are not what men are looking for. They're not out there. I think Rollo calls it the redevelopment stage, where like, you know, they might, and I see them, they come to my gym. They lose a little weight, they always gain it back. Yeah, I'm watching them right now. Now, my wife went out with a couple of them. All the girls in the gym, they'll go out together sometimes. She put a picture on Instagram from last night. I was like, damn, them bitches are getting fat again. They started coming to my gym because they were having divorces, right? It's funny. They were having divorces. They started coming to my gym. They started losing weight. And all of a sudden, now they're getting laid out there. And a lot of them that's it. They're getting pounded, and they just gained the weight back. So they think they're going to have this sex-filled life, but you know what? As we all know, you're just going to do the same thing you did before in a different way. You didn't heal yourself. You didn't evolve. You didn't grow more mature as a result of your divorce. You didn't grow up and can do it better next time. You're more than likely just going back to trying to be in your party years, but now you're old and you got baggage. What are you trying to do? Get boned? You're gonna hit menopause in a couple of years. So it's like you're on your last leg. But anyway, they believe they're going out there and they have this sex-filled life. This gets to I got a lot to say. Yeah, I'll talk all over. The myth of perpetual youth, delayed childbirth, for career, partying, single life is more interesting. Addiction to the thrill of falling in love again. This goes both ways. I don't want to pick on women, but a lot of guys out there, I really like what Pat said before, and I think what some of the other guys were saying before about love. Don't trust love. I think Steve was talking about it. Love has been completely misconstrued and turned into this emotional, physical, sensational melting that's a high, just like any drug. People who are addicted, especially men I'm talking now, who are addicted to sex, who are addicted to falling in love, are no better than a heroin addict. Because you're out there just looking for that next high. It feels good to, quote unquote, fall in love, but it's a thrill. It's just like getting on a roller coaster. You're going to get back off, and when you get down off that roller coaster, you're going to be a little dizzy. Right? Cheap thrill. Falling in love, there's nothing sexy about falling in love. Don't trust. This is what one of my favorite Eastern gurus said, Osho. Never trust a man who's fallen in love. Do not trust a man when he's in love. Because you're not yourself. You're clouded. I think that's what Pat said before. He says that you're clouded by the emotion. You're not a rational male when you're in love. Don't be in love. The real effects of divorce takes men up to 15 years to recover from the divorce. That's financially, and I'm sure a lot more. Statistically, children of broken homes are less successful. Divorce sucks. Split parenting is stressful, and people and values are often at odds. You guys, I don't have to beat a dead horse or sing to the choir. I'm sure you're aware. Protect your marriage against infidelity. The reason why I bring that up is because cheating will destroy your marriage instantly. Nothing will destroy your family. Other things will destroy your family over time. It'll seep in, and you got to be aware of those things, and I think some of the other speakers spoke about it. But if you want to destroy the dynamics of your family instantly, put your dick somewhere else. It's a bad idea. A bad idea. Because the power dynamics in the home will instantly be reversed. And even if you were alpha, all of a sudden, you're asking for forgiveness. Now you got to watch your step. You got to watch what you say. You don't want to piss her off. Another one that both Pat and Stephen Dean, I like the Dean. I keep going back and forth, am I going to say Dean or Stephen? Says is what I agree with there is if you do, let's say you do, you messed up, don't tell her. That's another one of these liberal lies that men should be vulnerable. Tell her all of your deepest, darkest secrets. No, don't do that. You didn't destroy the family yet. You didn't destroy it yet. You made a mistake. Repent. That means don't do it again. But the worst thing you could do is go and tell her. 23% of men, 19%, that's why I bring it up. A lot of people cheat. I don't say most, but a lot of people, 25%, cheat. And that's just who tells. Some survey says that it could be as high as 50%. And I would say it could even be higher because our culture doesn't value boundaries. It does not value boundaries. We are, skeptical of boundaries. So marriage is one of those things where it's kind of like, yeah, you do it, but nobody gonna tell me who I'm not gonna fuck. So there's this attitude, right? It's that whole YOLO, hedonistic attitude. Fidelity. I wrote the word infidelity. I wrote cheating first, but I didn't like it because it just sounded too much like, 16-year-olds. Cheating. Not fucking cheating because it's not a game. Infidelity. I like that word better, and I went to go look up what fidelity meant, and I realized just how alpha, how masculine, how patriarchal the word fidelity is. That's a strong word. Even a bank uses the word fidelity, right? Fidelity Bank. There's a good reason why. Because there's faithfulness, loyalty, noble. These are masculine traits. Fidelity is very masculine. So to remain, to have fidelity is to be a real man. A real man's not promiscuous. A real man doesn't cheat on his wife. Not because you got to be a good, or like what the world calls a good man. No, that's not why. It's because you're not a man. Because you're not carrying the virtue of a man. Virtue. We got to think in terms of virtues. How to protect your marriage and be devout. I'm going to go quickly because I got about 8 minutes left. Maintain your level of attraction. Don't get fat. One of the things that I realized I had going for me and still have going for me big time in my marriage, what keeps me in that dominant role is I'm a sexy motherfucker and a lot of women want me. My woman can't get fat. She realizes that. She realizes she has to do everything she can to keep up with a lot of the young girls that got their eye on me. Maintain your level of attractiveness. Avoid relationships with the opposite sex. Women are not your friends. If you have a friend, I hate when guys say this. We were friends. She's my friend. No, she's not. It doesn't exist. Rollo says that if you have a friend that's a woman and you're not having sex with her, you're a girlfriend. Get that through your head. That's another one of the pieces of bullshit that they teach us in school. Women are not your friends, nor should they be. Why would you want to be friends with a woman? I don't get it. I don't even like, and all my shit is coming out today. You know how it's like, I think this shit started in middle school and then we still do it as adults. And I'm not saying to any women that are in here that I'm not going to do this, but like I have resistance. I started having resistance against it, is hugging women that aren't my wife. What the fuck is this hugging stuff about between men and women when they first meet each other, or my friend's wife? I shake your hand, why am I gonna go hug you? Why am I putting my body close to yours? We're not friends and I'm not gonna fuck you. So what are we doing? And then, the other thing is like when guys hug my wife, I don't get so upset because I realize it's a cultural thing, there's nothing behind it, but it's just in my mind that that would be a good boundary to kind of be on board with everybody about. There's no reason to be hugging other people's wives. And women aren't your friends. Right? It's dumb. Don't expect your wife to be your friend. So it goes along the same line, but one of the things that a lot of guys get confused is that they think their wife needs to have the same hobbies or interests. I know I did at one point when I was becoming an entrepreneur and I wanted my wife to be interested in my business. She's not interested. Women aren't interested, and she doesn't need to be interested in the things that you're interested in. My wife and I have zero interests in common besides our marriage and our family. She reads fiction, I read nonfiction. We're complete opposites. She doesn't need to be my friend. Develop stronger same-sex relationships. Men need to be friends with men, not like those bonobo masturbators. We got to be more like the chimp gangs. And we got to be up to something, right? That's the other thing, too, that it's kind of a call to action here, but we got to be up to something. And it can't just be drinking and watching a hockey game. It's lame. Limit social media and keep an open book policy. Yeah, there's no reason for your wife to be putting selfies of herself on Instagram. I don't get it. But that's one of the things that when Stephen said it about dating, nip that shit in the bud. The other thing is open book policy. My wife has all my passwords. She can go into my phone. She can go into anything that I have going on online at any time. And I could her. Open book policy. There's nothing to hide. There's a sense of freedom associated with that in your heart. There's a sense of trust that's associated with one another. It's not about control. It's about truth, loyalty, openness, feeling free, liberation. You don't want to have you don't want to be hiding anything. There's no way to build any kind of relationship is to be hiding anything. Don't expose your wife to temptation, right? Don't let her hang out with male friends. Just like you don't have friends that are women, she don't have friends that's men. That doesn't make any sense. Why do you need a man friend for? You got me. And we see this all the time, you know. King Arthur and the Round Table and Lancelot. This is best man, his right-hand man, his best warrior. So he feels free. Hang out with my wife while I go do shit. That's a recipe for disaster, dog. You don't think he's gonna bone your wife if you got a chance? No, don't let your friends, don't let your brothers, and it's not about being prude, it's about being prudent. You gotta hang out with my wife by yourself. Why? Avoid pornography. I don't have to go there, you guys get it. Develop a hobby or a date night together. Me and my wife, like I said, we have zero interest, but we love being with each other, especially on Friday nights. We have date night. Sometimes we'll sit and we won't say anything. We'll just eat. And you know what? It would be so funny if there was like a little microphone there while we're having our date nights. And sometimes when we don't eat, all you hear is this. You know why? Because we're enjoying steak together. That's our hobby. A little bit of wine, a little bit of steak, and we're just sitting there like having orgasms. And looking at each other and nodding, and my wife is grateful. I'll talk about how to find a good woman, but she's grateful. She's, thank you, Elliott, thank you. Make your marriage your top priority. I'm going to go a little bit quicker because I got about 1 minute left. How to have pleasure in your marriage? Give her your gifts. Be a strong provider. Show her why she should appreciate you. Give your wife your best. Not because you have to, but because she is your moon. She reflects you in all your splendor. And if you don't like what you see in the mirror, that's because you ain't shining bright enough. Shower her. Go on frequent date nights, vacations together. Grab her ass, touch her, and make her feel desired as frequently as possible. Treat your wife like she's one flesh with you. We'll talk about this in a moment. How would you treat her if you thought she was a part of your body? I'm going over on time right now, Anthony, so I'm going to try to go as quickly as I can. Pleasure in your marriage, right attitude towards sex. Look at that. The husband should give to his wife her conjugal rights, and the likewise, wife to her husband. For the wife does not rule over her own body, but the husband does. Likewise, the husband does not rule over his own body, but the wife does. Do not refuse one another except perhaps by agreement for a season, that you may devote yourself to prayer. Super important, men. Those who are married, sex can become an addiction in the marriage also. Fast from sexing. Fast from sex. It's a good idea for you to maintain your frame, lest Satan tempt you. So I put the Duggars on there, and I put the Duggars over here too. I think they're, are they Mormon too? Protestant. Okay, well, this is what she says. This is This is how you know you can spot a good wife. Be available. And this was her advice to young women. Anyone can fix him lunch, but only one person can meet the physical needs of love that he has. You always need to be available for him. How to be more alpha and lead your family? Hey, Anthony, if I do go over, can I have 5 more minutes? Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. I think we could all agree that Donald Trump represents, maybe not him as a person, but what he represents is patriarchy. He represents, yes. He represents the return of patriarchy. That's what he's a symbol for. And you could see it in the way he is with his family. So we want to be more alpha. Spiritual headship. I think this is really important, and I'm going to make a case for religion now. And it's interesting because I don't necessarily identify with a religion, though I am Christian. See how weird that was? I have a hard time, and I've had a hard time, and I struggle with God. But I love religion deeply, and I understand that if you want to lead your family, you cannot be the authority. We're not the authority. We don't get our authority from ourselves because we're flesh and bone. We get our authority from above. We get our authority from our Father and our Father's fathers, the paternity, the eternal pattern. Paternity comes from the word pattern, which is the way to be. And we are taught a way to be, and we have faith in a way to be that comes from above. And if we don't take it from above, we will be dragged down below into the matter, into the mother, into the Maya of things. We get our authority from above. Patriarchy is impossible without religion. You're not a father without the Father. You cannot carry the blessings of the Father. You don't have the authority of the Father if you don't have religion. And I'm not saying which religion, not trying to tell you what to do, and I'm not proselytizing. I'm saying this is a fact. Look at patriarchy in the West. There was always a religion, be it the Norse and their gods, or the Greeks and their gods, but it always came down, divine power from above. No God equals no hierarchy. No hierarchy means no authority, no father energy. Author, king, author, authority, father figure, mentor. No father energy if there's no authority. No guidance because there's no authority. No humility. We think that our shit don't stink, and that's why we're suffering. No meaning. We can do whatever we want. It's a barren landscape. Fatherhood requires that men, through the authority of God the Father and the example set by Christ, be a living representation of patriarchal authority in the home. This is why the left hates Christianity. This is why they hate religion. This is why they hate God, because you get your authority from those things. And when those things are stripped away from you, you blow in the wind and you're easily manipulated. It's not about right or wrong. It's about faith. And faith is not about right or wrong. It's about conviction. And when you have that, you can't be fucked with. Spiritual headship, where your authority comes from, just very briefly, the umbrella of God's protection. God, husband, wife, children. That's the order. That's the natural order. And Christians would put Christ between God and husband. And I think it's a good idea to have a Christ-like figure. All religions had it, be it Krishna, be it Christ, and so forth. An example to live by, because we can't even imagine God, much less talk about him or be like him. We can't. There's no way. Christ or Krishna is an example, an embodiment, a manifestation, so that we can look to a father figure beyond our physical fathers. You want authority? Have faith in this order. But I want you to understand that the head of every man is Christ. The head of a woman is her husband. The head of Christ is God. It's this in this order. Wives, be subject to your husbands as to the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, as Christ is the head of the church, his body, and is himself its Savior. If we go back to this, treating your wife like she's a part of your body, when I first heard this and I then began to start considering this, the woman being and the man being, flesh of one flesh, and how he talks here about treating the wife like your body, my entire mindset shifted with regard to my wife. This wasn't too long ago. And if you really just literally think about your wife as an extension of your body, how would you treat that part of your body? I mean, and it's a pretty important part of your body. I mean, think about your right hand or your penis. Right hand and penis are pretty important. She's like both. She gets your work done and gets your work done. Very powerful and important part of your body. Treat it well. That's why I take my wife out to eat steak on Friday nights. I'm going to feed you well. You're part of my body. I ain't putting junk in your body. I'm not going to put junk in your mind. I'm not going to treat you poorly. You're part of my body, just like Christ treated it. Spiritual headship, where your authority comes from. Even so, husbands should love their wives as their own bodies. There you see it again. Love your wife like your own body. Think about that. If you get cancer, which is basically your cells going rogue, you got to ask yourself, where am I not treating my body right? If your wife's going rogue, you got to ask yourself, where are you not treating your body right? He who loves his wife loves himself. Damn. For no man who ever hates his own flesh, but nourishes and cherishes it, as Christ does the church, because we are members of his body. I put that picture there. That picture is actually on my tattoo. And it's like this. I see this as a yin-yang almost, with the male, female, the soft, hard, the angular, dark, and the soft, flowing, white. I love it. It's an integration. How to lead your family. Number one, have vision and direction. You make the vision. You decide the direction. Know it before you even shack up. I remember talking to my wife when we were in high school, and I think this is why it lasted so long and did so well. I remember being in high school and telling her, of course, she's like writing her name with my last name and having daydreams and circles and writing hearts and stuff. And I told her plain and simple like this, hey, babe, I'm going to live a pretty roller coaster type life. I'm an adventurous man, a spontaneous man. I have high hopes and ambitions and dreams. I'm going to do big things in this world, but it ain't going to be easy, and there might be struggle. You want to come along with me? I'd love to have you. But if you got a problem with any of that, then we're not going to be together. And she would always, of course, nod, yes, I want to go with you. I want to go with you. I want to go with you. But you know what? I don't think she could have had that trust had I not had the conviction in my vision and direction. And it's crazy how my life has unfolded based on that vision and direction. Devote yourself fully to your family. This is a tough one in the world where you're supposed to be yourself and to self-actualize. We're so self-oriented. Devotion is the preeminent warrior quality, to devote oneself, to sacrifice oneself for something bigger and better than yourself. Devote yourself to your family. I love that word, very masculine word, devotion. Do more than your fair share. I heard multiple speakers talk about that today. I think Socrates was talking about it with the diapers. That was brilliant, Socrates. Where's Socrates? Is he even in here? That was brilliant. The way you turned it into a military operation. That's what it is. That was 100% it. Do more than your fair share. Be that grunt in the family because you're the stronger one. The wife is going to flip out. She's going to have anxiety. She can't handle it. You got to take control and bring in the bag. Keep physically strong. I say no more. The body is the mind. You can't be weak. You can't be fat. You got to be fit because this is warrior work, devotion work. Keep morally straight. This is keeping your heart strong and keeping your mind clear, keeping your soul clear, at peace. It doesn't mean that you're not going to stray in thought, but be chaste in your behavior. Be strong in your will. Be moral in your activity. Keep mentally alert. You got to be aware because the snake is sneaky and will come right in your families, will sneak right in the back door in a myriad of different ways. Every time I think I'm setting up strong boundaries and doing the right thing for my family in that way, it sneaks in somehow. You got to be aware for the demons. They come from kids' friends. They come from the media. You got to constantly be aware of what they're learning. My daughter got on some transgender shit for a moment. Yeah, because she's watching YouTube videos, where you're a hero to be a transgender, and it's all celebrated. I had to squash that shit in the bud. I mean, it got too far at one point where I had to rein it all in because I wasn't being mentally alert. I didn't see the signs, and then when it came to, when it got a little too far, I had to stomp hard. Good thing that shit is gone now, but it was silly. But that silliness is how the children then run the family because it goes against your values and your virtue. And if you're not mentally alert, Satan will snatch your kids' minds up real quick. What is a good wife? An excellent wife is the crown of her husband, but she who brings shame is like rottenness in his bones. Need I say more? You want a crown or rottenness in your bones? How to spot a good wife, real quick. She opens her mouth with wisdom, right? Make sure when she opens her mouth, no dumb bullshit comes out. And the teachings of kindness is on her tongue. My wife, the other women come to my wife for wisdom. They come to my wife for wisdom, and she's the youngest one. And you know why? Because she's reflecting my splendor. I give her credit for being a good moon. But when she opens her mouth, know that she's a reflection of you. She looks well to the ways of the household. Notice, those aren't two sentences. Not she looks well. That's real superficial. I think Pat was talking about that. Fuck the way she looks. It's important. You want to have sex with her. But she looks well to the ways of the household and does not eat the bread of idleness. She's got to keep busy. The house is like running a company. Her children raise up and call her blessed. It's wonderful to have children that acknowledge how wonderful their parents are. It's a good thing. Her husband also praises her, as you should. Always praise your wife when she's doing a good job. I say thank you 1,000 times a day. Many women have done excellently, but you surpass them all. Remind her about how awesome she is. But it won't take much if you got a good woman. Charm is deceitful and beauty is in vain. Yeah. You know what the world is dangling in front of you all day long? Charm and beauty. Run the other way. Look, my wife has small boobs. They used to be big when she was pregnant. But she's breastfed 4 kids. And they're not perky and plump like they used to be. But there's not a chance in hell they're going to have her stuff silicone up her fucking skin in order to uphold some sort of imaginary Barbie ideal of what a woman should look like. She's a good woman. She doesn't need big breasts. You get where I'm going anyway. Give her of the fruit of her hands and let her works praise her in the gates. Beautiful. I love that word. Okay, this is my last one. I'll go through quickly. I didn't even click them. Okay, good. From the book of Hulse, these are my rules. How to find a good wife. Number 1, observe the virtue of chastity. I don't think it's a good idea to be promiscuous. I don't think it's a good idea to be jicking and jizzing a lot, especially if you don't have your boundaries in order. Refer back to Stephen the Dean, his workshop. If you're going to be screwing, there's got to be rules. I ain't giving you my seed. You ain't going to get that just because I want a nut. Number 2, if you're having sex with her, she's already your wife. That's my mindset. You put yourself in her, guess what? One flesh. You just became one flesh, buddy. And what God brings together, no man shall separate. So if you're having regular sex with a woman, you be of the mindset that she's your wife. That's the way to approach it. Otherwise, she's a prostitute. And you can't say to her or to yourself or anyone else that she's my girlfriend or I love her. No, you don't. Not if you don't acknowledge her as your wife while you're banging her. Have that amount of respect for yourself and her. Number 3, if your wife doesn't need to be your friend, we spoke about that, but a good wife. Date and marry young. So this is where I'm different from a lot of the guys, only because of my experience. So I have to share, based on my perspective. It was good that we dated and were exclusive very young. My wife, unlike a lot of my friends' wives, has not ridden the cock carousel. She's free from carousel cock. Right? We have very limited partners between the two of us. Very limited. We were children, basically. So she's, all that comes with it, the alpha widowship, and then, of course, I don't have to tell you anymore, but I think it's good. I think it's good. Especially, and so I have to go back to my experience, if she's trained well. My wife came from a trashy background. I gotta be honest. She didn't have any guidance. Her father was not an alpha male, and her mother was a crazy woman that went crazy and ran away to Maine and left her children there. But the fact that my wife stayed with my family, basically, my parents basically made her one of their children, crazy. But this is kind of the stuff that you would see maybe in like Tanner's community, where like the parents know the other parents' children, and they kind of are raised with the same values. She came into my home at a very young age, very impressionable age, and she wanted to take on the value of and the virtues of a good family, and that's why it worked. So I could just go based on my experience. Don't marry a useless woman. This is my dad's, actually. You guys will get to meet my dad tomorrow. Don't marry a useless woman. A useless woman that can't do anything. She's good looking, but good at nothing. Don't date older women. I think Pat was talking about it, but I know a lot of the other guys were talking about it. She will always look down on you. Don't marry a woman with baggage, because now you have 2 masters, her and her kids. Speak openly about your vision and values early. Make it very clear what I'm about, what I'm not about, where I'm going. Know your roles, play your part. Be very clear. We spoke about, like with my wife, you're going to stay home, you're going to take care of the kids. We'll make that sacrifice. I will provide. Very clear. Follow Steve. I put Steve Williams there again because of what he said yesterday. I was so impressed with his talk. Advice about dating. You got to be very clear. You got to be very clear about what it is, what you're about, what you'll tolerate, what you won't tolerate, and make your own rules. You only got those 3 ironclad rules. And that's it, folks. I appreciate you. Appreciate this time. Appreciate you letting me go over a little bit. Done.
George Bruno with the 21 Report. We're at the 21 Convention Patriarch Edition, and I'm talking with Elliott Hulse. Welcome, Elliott.
Thanks, George.
All right. How'd it go today on stage?
Really well.
And what was your topic?
Defending marriage in a degenerate age.
It certainly is degenerate, isn't it?
Yeah, I'd say.
What are the enemies of marriage today?
Well, I went through a list of about 10, and I began with one that I learned here in the manosphere from Rollo Tomasi, and he refers to the female primary social order, something of that effect. Mm-hmm. Hypergamy, unchecked hypergamy, that's one big part of it. But then it also goes so much deeper. I think that's like the biological component.
Yeah.
But when you look at consumerism, and the focus outside of the family and more on how much can we get and how much can we buy and how much can we consume, as opposed to how much time and energy and effort can be given to the family for its own nourishment, soul's nourishment, the state with easy divorce, feminism with their objective to destroy the family. I gave a really good quote written by Dunbar, I forget her first name. But so I went through a list of myriad of different ways that there's this onslaught against marriage in our culture.
How do you fortify a marriage with all this stuff being against it?
Well, that was what my talk was about, and one of the things that I offered as far as fortification is concerned, I think it's important for men to take the position of leadership in their home. And I spoke about where we get our authority, and that it's important for us to draw down divine authority by having some faith.
Yeah.
That your woman's not going to trust you just on your own authority. Many of us have strained or estranged relationships with our fathers, but there's always the archetype pattern of the father, and whether it's right or wrong, it's your level of conviction that the path laid in front of you for how to be a man and how to lead your family, the faith in that gives you the strength to stand on, that gives her the trust in your ability to lead. So it's like it's very difficult for us to rest on our own authority because I say so.
Right.
And so a part of my talk was just to at least consider, I know we've got guys of different religions and some are religious or not, but at least to consider it as a red pill mechanism for how to raise your family.
Right. Now, you're a father of 4, and you've been married for a while, and you go way back with your wife, right?
Yeah.
How long?
We started dating when we were 14 years old.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and we got married at age 23, and we have 4 children. So a part of my talk was the benefit of limiting sexual partners and not being promiscuous, men and women. Of course, I have to be an advocate for dating and marrying early. I did it and it worked.
Yeah.
And I laid out all the reasons why it worked, and so
That's pretty awesome. I think because there's so many waves coming against marriage, and society's pretty wacky. I was talking to the guys earlier. I'll talk to a young man and say, so do you want to have children? He'll say, well, I wouldn't want to bring children into this crazy world. Yeah. And I'm thinking that's kind of like waving the white flag of surrender and just giving up before you even start.
And that's like saying I wouldn't want to give medicine to this dying patient. When we bring children into the world who can reflect the divine splendor, children who are good children, we're offering medicine, we're injecting medicine into a degenerate culture.
Yeah. And they're focusing more on the degeneracy in the world rather than the power in their own parenting. Like, I would want to bring children in this world because my children are an antidote to the degenerate society.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think that's focusing on despair. And I think a lot of guys in the quote-unquote manosphere succumb to despair and negativity and darkness. And our message is be fruitful and multiply.
Yeah.
There's no better way to create a legacy. Your kids will outlive you, hopefully. And your seed goes on.
Yeah, and I think there's no better way than to be fruitful and multiply, to perpetuate cultural values and norms. We're living in a country where white people, the people who built this country, are having less children, and Puerto Ricans and Mexicans are having a hell of a lot of kids.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that it's good or bad, but if we want to preserve American culture, Western culture, then the people who created it should be having more children.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, they're going to be out-popularized pretty soon.
Yeah.
Outnumbered.
Yeah, I had heard at one point, in 20 years, Italy won't even be Italian anymore because of the influx of non-Italians in Italy.
Right.
Can you imagine Italy won't be Italian?
Yeah, how weird.
Like, that's just an odd concept. It is. I find that bringing children into the world gives the world hope.
Yeah.
And there's never a right time to have kids.
Right.
Was society ever perfect for child rearing? I mean, every era has its challenges. Yeah. Every era has its wars. Mm-hmm. So for someone to say in despair, I don't want to bring a child into this world, it's almost, they just gave up too early. Yeah.
Weak.
It is weak.
Mm-hmm.
It is weak.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm finding a lot of young people are saying that.
Yeah. We're weak.
What do you think contributes to that despair? Why do they have that?
There are all kinds of myths that attend that also.
Yeah.
You know, like this whole idea that the world is going to melt because of climate change.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the lies that white people have been more apt to just accept.
Yeah.
That we should stop having children because the earth is going to melt.
Yeah.
And I tend to think that there's a social agenda behind that. Science has shown us that that's not true. Not only that is it not to say that it's not true that the earth is getting warmer, but the earth is supposed to be getting warmer. We go through these cycles. It's normal and natural. Don't stop having children because the earth is getting warmer.
Right.
Just acknowledge it.
Yeah.
And so, where am I going with that? My point is, I don't remember.
Well, I can see doing things like not littering because you want to leave a nice, clean earth.
Mm-hmm.
I can see not like wasting natural resources. That's cool. But lumping not having children into that same category, to me, is going a little bit too far. Mm-hmm. I think so. And I think it's alarmist in nature.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's right. So back to your question, and why are people feeling this despair? Because they're swallowing the media bullshit.
Yeah, yeah. Where does hope exist in this world of degeneracy? How do you give hope to young people? I know you spoke on marriage and family.
To give hope, you've got to be inspired. And I love that word inspire because the word spirit, spiro, to inspire, to take in the spirit. There must be something that you've drawn in or has infused itself into you that gives you a courage and a sense of meaning for the future that I think can only come from religion and a religious imagination. Yeah. More so than religion itself, but the religious imagination that gives us this sense that things can get better, that we can evolve, we can grow in virtue.
Yeah.
And so when we have that, no matter how dark it gets in the mass of the world, there will always be small pockets of light. Yeah. And if we can carry that light even in the thickest of darkness, that candles will be lit.
Yeah. You have an influence. You're on YouTube with quite a following. Mm-hmm. What kind of message do you give your followers?
Well, it has and always will be become the strongest version of yourself. I started as a strength coach, but strength went beyond just the body.
Yeah.
So to be the strongest version of yourself and to empower one another. And that's about being the brightest candle you can. Yeah. And being sure that your flame is catching other candles as well.
Yeah. I've watched you on shows like the Red Man Group. And wow, what in addition to that group of men, the perspective that you bring changes the flavor of the Red Man Group it kind of strengthens it, I think. It's not all about picking up women. It's not all about the single life and going wide. Right. It's about going deep. And I think you bring a depth to that conversation. That's what I noticed. That was one of the first things that I noticed.
Yeah, thank you.
Depth. Yeah, absolutely. How do you like the convention so far?
I love it. And I love what it stands for more than anything, what it means. Yes. It's a sign of the times.
It's needed, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is. Who have you connected with here that you feel that you will stay connected with in the future?
Oh, well, I really enjoyed both the talks and then individual conversations with Steve the Dean Williams.
Steve.
Yeah.
You know what's interesting about Steve? He talk about legacy, and actually, he and Tanner both said something. And I interviewed Tanner this morning and Steve yesterday, and Tanner would say to his kids, "You're a guzzy." Tanner Guzzy would say, "You're a guzzy. Act like it." Steve Williams would say, "You are a Williams." Like when he finds his children acting weak, "You are a Williams." Be worthy of that name.
Yeah, I like
Powerful.
that. Yeah, I resonate with both of their messages.
Holy smokes.
Tanner was also right up there, you know, between the two of them and their talks. It resonated deeply with both of what they offered, and then I had a wonderful opportunity to speak with them yesterday at dinner.
What does it mean to be a Hulse?
To be strong. That's the first thing that comes to mind and comes to heart. Hulse is about courage. It's about strength. It's about determination and forward momentum.
Yeah.
And stalwartness, steadfastness. You know, it's very vigorous.
I've noticed 3 or 4 times during this talk already, you've taken deep breaths to empower yourself. It's like breathing charges you up. Some people, one of the biggest things that I notice with people is that they breathe very shallow. You and air are good friends. You and oxygen seem to be good friends.
I'm a fire sign. Oxygen and fire, baby.
Oxygen. Yeah, I noticed that. And for the few moments that I saw you on stage, there's periods of silence. You're not just talking to talk. You have periods of silence. And then I watch you look at the crowd and think and make eye contact with people. And I was standing in the back, and as you were walking back and forth on the stage, I watched the heads watching you. It was really interesting, very inspiring, just watching the crowd respond to you. What do you think is the biggest message that the audience left with today?
Well, what I was hoping was to instill a sense of dignity in the marriage archetype.
Yeah.
That there's something strong and masculine and devout to the marriage commitment, you know, because I think it's really been bastardized and taken advantage of and has lost so much of its splendor in our culture. And so what I was hoping is to show them how red pill it is to be married and to be a father. I know our whole conference is about patriarchy. And to bring back and to strengthen a patriarchy, we've got to become fathers. And to be a father, you've got to be a husband. And to be a husband, you've got to lead women. Be strong for women. Draw down the divine authority and lead your home. And so between just giving marriage some dignity again, and also with this sense of openness to God and religion as an authority that you can rest on and bring into your home as a foundation for your own strength, faith, really. That maybe I opened some questioning, you know, and exploring.
Marriage and family is not for weaklings.
No.
The first thing that I thought of was, I mean, you see all these hats with similar phrases, "make this great again," you know, all the, you know, and I'm thinking, make men strong again.
Yes.
Make men strong again. And I think that's what you're doing.
Yes.
I notice that when attendees stand around you, like everyone has their little moments with the speakers in the social areas, after the speeches, in the evenings and stuff like that. When people are around you, they stand taller.
Is that right?
Yeah. Their posture is better.
Yeah.
and they tend to mirror you. And you are making men strong again. I observed it, and I needed to tell you that.
Thank you.
It's very, very obvious. It's noticeable. Elliott Hulse. Find him on YouTube. Thank you, Elliott.
Thank you, George.